Boy, this is a fun week. It's one of the most eventful weeks in National Hockey League history, and we are going to kick it off with Nighttime at Noon live from Studio 31, City National Arena. Welcome in, Daren Millard, along with Brian McCormack. We have a cast of thousands in the room as we will start with Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final tonight. Then we'll get into the Hall of Fame voting for the class of 2024, the NHL awards this week, and then the National Hockey League Draft descends on Sphere for Friday and Saturday. It is jam-packed. The National Hockey League probably didn't expect it to go this way with the Monday finish of the season to a Friday with the National Hockey League Draft, but it's unique in one of the coolest spots that we could be.
Daren, I've got more paper in front of me than I've had for any test I've ever studied for, but there's so much to cover with the draft. And as you mentioned, within the span of a calendar week, we're going to go from Game 7 Cup Final to draft to free agent frenzy on Canada Day. There's a lot to cover. And the funny thing is that you've got fans as well as general managers across the league. Everyone has their eyes on Game 7 because, of course, the entire world is going to be tuned into Game 7, but everyone has some business to get to pretty immediately afterwards. So
we will be here again next Monday as the start of development camp descends on City National Arena, and all the prospects come in for that annual rite of passage where teams will work through their players. Vegas Golden Knights no different, and take a look at their prospects and just educate them as far as what goes into being a professional. So that is coming up next Monday. We will know everything that happens with Game 7. The awards are also this week, and then, of course, the National Hockey League Draft. This show is focused on the draft more than anything, but then we got this Game 7 popped on us.
So we can't not talk about it.
We're going to split now. Divide our attention between what's going to happen tonight in South Florida between the Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, and then also give you an idea of the top 5 picks in the National Hockey League Draft, and then really dig into some of the players in the window of opportunity that are floating around being talked about. The Vegas Golden Knights will pick number 19, so we'll give you some of the players that are ahead of that and some of the players that that they might take that are a little bit behind there. So 7 or 8 players that are really, unless they go completely off the board, which is interesting because this draft has that potential where after the top 10, it is really filled with the opportunity for surprises.
Yeah, every mock draft you look at, it seems like there's not complete consensus, but you see a lot of the same names in those first 10 to 12 picks, and then it starts getting very, very creative. And I think just kind of giving you the idea of the breadth of options that we're going to see. First of all, you've got Macklin Celebrini at the top spot. Doesn't seem like a secret. Seems like it's pretty well broadcasted that that's where San Jose is going to go. That's consensus. Everyone agrees. Then after that, there's 6, 7 defensemen that everyone seems really excited about, though you could see a run on defensemen early. And then it gets kind of broad. So you have Demidov out of Russia is a player that there seem to be a lot of, I shouldn't say question marks about. People want more confirmation. And then he appeared at a camp, kind of like a pro day in Fort Lauderdale last week, and his measurables were terrific, and people were very, very encouraged what they saw from Demidov. But it seems like there's a lot of defenseman-centric talk up top. And then it gets very broad. And you know, we talk about the increase. It used to be that the first round was so heavily dominated by the OHL, the Western Hockey League, and the Q, and it still is. But in the last handful of years, so much more of a presence of NCAA players, especially at the top. And this is a draft where you look at the middle of the first round, there's 3 to 5 USHL prospects that are higher than you typically see them start to draw in outside of the National Development Program. So
the calling card of the first round on Friday night at Sphere is 1 defenseman, 2 Russians, and 3 is unknown. Because once you get through 10, everybody is going to be probably looking for as much need as they will best player available, because the best player available is so split.
Yeah, and it feels like there is a, again, there's the best player is Celebrini. There's several forward prospects that are dynamic, and there's 6, 7 defensemen people seem really excited about. And then after that, it gets a little more shuffled, which is to say...
You're at 15. Let's say you're 15 Detroit.
Yeah.
Are you looking at need, or are you looking at best player available? Because there's no consensus to best player available.
Right.
That's different on 7 different mock drafts. So
Right.
it's just a little bit more unique, more wide open.
Well, and especially, you mentioned Detroit, especially like Steve Yzerman feels like he surprises us most years anyway with the decision that he makes. But if you look at teams that have multiple picks in the first round, San Jose has 2, Chicago has 2, Ottawa has 2, Calgary has 2, and I believe Montreal and Anaheim have 2. So they've got something to maneuver with. There are certainly, especially being this tight to the free agency period, are there going to be more movers and shakers with trades, with whether it's negotiating rights? There's some goaltenders there still perhaps to be on the move. This seems like the kind of draft where there will be some people, once you get outside that 12, 13, 14 range, might be open to conversations about scooting back a little bit to gather more.
And if your staff really loves somebody, there is that opportunity to move up.
Yes.
But with so many teams having multiple picks and it being a wide open group in 2024, I think there's also the potential where clubs that don't have a first-round pick or are later in the first round will be content just to sit and wait for that player or players to come to them.
Yeah, again, depending on what you feel like you need, especially the NHL draft, it feels like more than any other draft. You don't have to draft for positional need. Once you get past pick 3 or 4, probably,
right,
you're not looking at someone who's in your lineup next year. But, who's got more space on the shelf at different position groups. You're still looking to stock up what you're lacking in your system. One of the things that I think is interesting is you look at the first 3 picks. Again, Celebrini to San Jose is pretty much agreed upon. But then I feel like most of the drafts that you look at, most of the mock drafts you look at, you've got the
2 Russian defensemen.
You've got Belarusian in Levshinov, Artem Levshinov out of Michigan State, who is second among freshmen in the country in points per game and is taking big leaps defensively. He measured, I think he was 6'2", 210, and a right-handed shot. He looks bigger on tape to me, but what do I know? But you understand the draw. And then you have Anton Salayev, who is playing in the KHL, 11 points for him as a rookie. I believe that is the most points for a draft-eligible rookie in the KHL. More than Tarasenko had 10 when he was a rookie. So those are the 2.
This is a defenseman.
And I'm leaving out, for Anton Salayev, he's 6'7". So you can understand why that draw comes to the top. But those are, big-bodied, straight-ahead, defensively conscious guys who put up a lot of points. For Levshinov, 35 points in 38 games as a freshman at Michigan State. Like, you understand the draw. But then as you go down to some of these other defensemen that scouts seem to like, Sam Dickinson, Zane Parekh had 96 points in the OHL as a defenseman. There's big-bodied, straight-line, two-way defenseman up top, but there's a lot of dynamic puck movers that are still probably in that top 10 to 12 range, it looks like.
That the highest selection, top 3, by a Belarusian? I think it should be, right?
I think it's got to be close if it isn't.
Well, now you know what you're doing during the commercial breaks.
I'm going to be Googling these things for you. That's research assistant.
That. I absolutely love that. Look at all the paperwork that you have. Notes, handwritten notes.
I'm just trying to be prepared for any question you might ask me by using the research that's done by other people who know what they're talking about.
This is going to be outstanding because I should be able to ask you almost anything today based on your preparation. Daren Millard along with Brian McCormack. It's nighttime at noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas and all the VGK social media channels. Let's get into the Stanley Cup Final and Game 7. The season will end tonight. Is this the biggest game, most high-profile game in NHL history?
That seems heavy.
Okay. I thought the same thing, and then I started going through comparables.
Yeah. You've got a Canadian Cup drought that could be busted. You've got the highest-profile player in the world with a chance to win his first cup. You have the implications of a 3-0 series comeback. In the Cup Final has not happened since 1942.
Yeah, last time somebody came back from 3-0 down and won.
All of those incredibly...
And a team in back-to-back Stanley Cup finals having lost last year.
Yeah.
So I was going through, okay, if it's not the biggest game in NHL history, what was? And there's high-profile games. Gretzky's last game that was watched. Game 7. Let's go. New York Rangers breaking the drought in 1994. I remember that. Let's go. Game 7. New Jersey against Colorado, win it for Ray.
Yeah.
Captured a lot of attention with Patrick Waugh and company. You had a Game 7 Philadelphia and Edmonton with Wayne Gretzky, Ron Hextall's 1987 marvelous run. We've had great games, but this is special. It's hyperbole with facts to back it up.
I don't feel it. I'm enjoying the postseason as much as anybody else is. It doesn't feel to me consequential enough with other factors that come in. Perfect example, as you're going through them, I think to myself, and Florida is a terrific team, and that market is it loves that team, and it's growing, all of that. I guess maybe the weight of history behind it is I think of when Pittsburgh beat Detroit in the second rematch.
In the rematch,
in 08. 09?
09.
09. That, to me, felt like the entire world is descending on that game. And this one...
Very similar because Sid...
Yes, Sid
won his first.
Against the history and the banners of Detroit and a proven Detroit and the rematch on top of it. That felt more of a perfect storm to me. Don't get me wrong, this is going to be phenomenal. I'm stoked out of my mind for it. That felt more perfect storm. I think for me what it might actually be is that Florida should have put this away. And the fact that they haven't is big kudos to Edmonton, but it also, to me, is Florida looked down. Florida ran off the cliff like the Looney Tunes. And as long as you keep running forward, you're fine. But they looked down, and they've been in free fall ever since.
Were you a Looney Tunes guy?
I have a better analogy than that, but we've got a long show ahead.
I'm a Looney Tunes guy.
I'm pro Looney Tunes.
Yeah. Sounded like you were, couching it. You wanted to use it, but you were a little nervous about using it.
I think I overuse it. I probably used that analogy 3 times in the last month and a half. We just haven't been on air.
I'm going to convince you why this is the biggest game in NHL history as we go along during this show.
I'm easily I've never disagreed with you for more than 20 minutes.
There's facts to back it up tonight. And it starts with Connor McDavid, but he's not the only story that takes it into the next level. We'll get back into the National Hockey League draft, talk about the top 5 and the top 10, where they might be going and who to look for, and brief you on what names to be on the lookout for. And then we'll get into the VGK side of things with that number 19 pick in the first round and tell you what else is on the docket for the Vegas Golden Knights. And then we get into next week and all the fun with free agency and development camp. But before we go, here's a note from Brian McCormack on VGK Authentics.
Well, thank you, Daren. You know, folks, if you've ever wanted to own a piece of Golden Knights history of your very own, VGK Authentics is the official channel for game-used items coming off the ice. From game-used pucks to game-worn jerseys and everything in between, owning something from your favorite Golden Knights player has never been so simple. Shop VGK Authentics on VegasTeamStore.com, at the Arsenal at City National Arena, and at the VGK Authentics kiosk behind Section 10 when you're at T-Mobile Arena for games next season. VGK Authentics.
And just tag on to that, big week for VGK Authentics with the equipment sale. Coming up on Wednesday. You've got some great VGK Authentic gear to look at, and then a lot of the different equipment that we're used to seeing out there between gear and then clothing, a lot of stuff to be able to put your hands on as a season seat holder, as a fan of the team. It's going to be spaced out on Wednesday here at City National Arena.
Daren was trying to get his foot measured 20 minutes before the show. We almost didn't get on air on time, so don't wait.
I like to measure my foot because then I know how tough it's going to be to get in my mouth. Because that happens.
Flexible.
At least a couple of times a show. We'll be back with more Nighttime at Noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas.
Golden Knights fans, do you want to learn how to skate like the pros, or at the very least like Daren Millard? Curious to see where the Golden Knights practice, or do you want to grab some gear? Stop by and visit City National Arena, located in downtown Summerlin, the official practice facility of the Vegas Golden Knights. For hours and programming, visit citynationalarena.com, citynationalarena.com, and learn more today. Brian McCormack, Daren Millard here with you, nighttime at noon, NHL Draft Edition, talking about far more than that. Daren is trying to talk me into the fact that tonight is going to be the most consequential night of hockey viewership of my life. I'm very excited for it. I'm not quite there, but you're going to work on me over the course of the afternoon.
By the way, City National Arena, a good place to hang out during these hot days.
Yeah.
Now, the ice crew, amazing operations crew, is working on changing over the sheet in the Summerlin Hospital Arena, Rink A, and that's where we're going to see the equipment sale on Wednesday, so you don't have to walk on the ice. They time it perfectly there, but with the rink, you just come in here, you sit down for a little bit and cool off, and then you go about your day.
Lunch upstairs.
The ratings for the Stanley Cup Final have been very good in the United States. We expected them to be fantastic in Canada because of the appearance of a Canadian team, but the draw of Connor McDavid has pulled people in the United States. It's not Florida going for their first championship in franchise history after falling short last year to the Vegas Golden Knights. Connor McDavid has grabbed hold, watching the best player in the world. So many positives with our sport that we'll get into.
I think McDavid is 42 points for the playoffs, right? So it's 5 shy of Gretzky's record for one postseason.
He's going to need a big night.
So if he gets it, they're going to win it, right?
Yes.
There's no way that McDavid gets it and they don't win the cup in Edmonton.
Although, wouldn't that just be the fitting end on a topsy-turvy year?
Well,
because this final for Edmonton is a microcosm of their season, their regular season. Fall behind, be left for dead, and then figure it out and come back. So they've done it twice now. Can they finish it off and win? We'll get into the Stanley Cup Final in Game 7 more in depth in just a little bit. The National Hockey League Draft comes your way on Friday at Sphere. They're not saying the Sphere anymore. It's just Sphere. I missed the memo on dropping the, but that's on ESPN. That's what they're calling it. Did you know that there was no the in it?
No, I haven't been invited over there yet.
Yeah. You can come by on Friday.
I think I will.
Yeah, drop me off. So we have the first round on Friday. That's the 3-hour extravaganza. And then rounds 2 through 7 will go Saturday morning. 8:30 start on Saturday morning because they want it running during the morning in the Eastern time zone. So it's an early start. That'll put a dent in it. Good thing everybody's got to really keep their minds focused. The scouts and all the hockey people with the decisions.
No partying on Friday night.
Partying on Friday night. But this might be the one year. Normally in a National Hockey League draft, I'm guilty of this as much as anybody. That last pick on the Saturday, round 7, it's just a run to the exits. Like some teams are already gone by then. They're heading to the airport. That's not going to be the case this year. It's the last in-person draft for the National Hockey League. A whole bunch of special things. Looking forward to what the people at Sphere offer up. But the first round has your consensus number 1 pick. San Jose has that. After it, Chicago, Anaheim, Columbus, and Montreal round out your top 5. Are any of those teams in a position with a player that they get to turn any type of corner? Or do you have to go deeper into the top 10? Columbus, we've been waiting for a while, and they keep getting in their own way. I don't think they're as bad as they were last year. It's just...
Yeah, I was going to say maybe Montreal. Because Montreal...
Tough division, though.
Tough division, but they've got some skill players that it seems like they've got 3 or 4 guys that you're ready to take a next step. Mm-hmm. Now, it depends on them doing that.
Yeah.
But I feel like...
Slavkovsky took a massive jump last year.
And Cole Caulfield, when he's been healthy, is dynamic. So I could see... Of those 5, if I'm going to pick one, I think I'd pick them. Columbus is under new management now. It's going to be a new head coach. That might take time to shake out. And even their players who performed well last season were... Marchenko. Marchenko. There are a couple of nice surprises, but none of their dynamic young guys, with the exception of Fantilli, who got hurt.
They were sunk from the start last year with everything that went on.
It's a challenge. So, I mean, there's talent there. What's interesting to me is San Jose is going to be a project for a little while now. Chicago's still going to be a project for a couple of years, you'd think.
Anaheim should be getting close to. But they remember the first half last year.
Yeah,
they were really good.
What's weird with Anaheim is that you look at their back end, and it's one of the things I'm curious about when you see some of the different projections, some of these mock drafts. Everyone has them going with either Levshinov or Salayev. Again, point per game, 6'2".
One's righty, one's lefty.
Yes, Levshinov is a righty. At Michigan State, was almost a point per game freshman at Michigan State with size and good defensively. You don't want to turn that away. Salayev is 6'7". You understand what the draw is. Like, how do you pass a guy like this up? Especially because, as we said, like, it feels like some of the defensemen, there's good offensive options in the top half of the round too, but there seem like sure things on the blue line option or closer to them. But if you look at Anaheim, what they've recently added over the last couple of years, Minchikov, Zellweger, Tristan Luneau.
It allowed them to make different deals.
Yeah, it allowed them to bring in Cutter Gauthier and let Jamie Drysdale go, because you figure, all right, we're developing defensemen well. We've got a good stash of young defensemen, and many of them are ready to make the jump to the NHL or at least do significant work in San Diego. But Nathan Gaucher hasn't popped yet among their first-round forwards. Jacob Perreault hasn't popped yet amongst their first-round forwards. I don't know why it would be so automatic that they would go blue line. You're not drafting for position.
I think they still go blue line and hope that the player turns out, and if they do have an overabundance of great defensemen, they'll do exactly what they did with the acquisition of Gauthier.
Yeah.
Use it to their strength. Who would you take between 2 and 3 if we're looking at I'm taking Levshinov.
I go Levshinov. Yeah, but I mean, they're both going to be happy. Mm-hmm. But I think I go Levshinov. It just feels a little more both of them have played against men, one at the NCAA, one at KHL. I mean, I think
6'7" is hard to pass up.
I think Salayev is signed in the KHL through next, maybe even 25, 26, so it takes a little longer to get him over here. That might also be a factor. But I just found it interesting, especially when you hear the discussion of where Zegras' place is in Anaheim, that it was just so automatic that they might not consider one of the high-end forwards. But again, it's hard to turn down a 6'7" defenseman.
Levshinov and Salayev, I put them together there. I think that's the way you go up. When you announce that pick at number 2 with Chicago, you just say that, Levshinov. And then you just wait. Whoever gets the podium first.
Once they get up on stage, it's too embarrassing to send someone back. They just got to go through with it.
You might get both of them. Levshinov, he's got everything.
Yeah.
With him, and his background, real challenging life. And he's looked at the sunny side of everything, and I love everything that's going on with him. Michigan State went to Michigan State.
Yeah,
took like 6 hours of English courses
here he is,
every day before he went to Michigan State.
Doesn't he look bigger than 6'2", 210?
Yeah.
That's there's number 5 on the right wing side for those who are streaming with us. That's Levshinov, and there was only one freshman defenseman in the country, if I remember my notes correctly, who had more points per game than Levshinov did, and it's again a player that doesn't have his build, but at the University of Denver was Zeev Buyum, who I really, really liked. He had 50 points in 42 games for Denver.
Was impressed by him was Macklin Celebrini. At the Frozen Four. Could not say enough about him. So there's that. That's high praise.
Yeah, and so Buyum, again, 50 points in 42 games at Denver. He got a gold medal at the World Juniors, had 5 points in 7 games. He was the youngest defenseman there. And when you watch the highlights I've seen of Buyum, there's just so much patience with the puck. Like he'll hang on to it in all 3 zones, but he'll hang on to it. He'll draw people to him. And that's at 5-on-5. He'll work below the dot. So there's a patience and a swagger there that I thought was so impressive for a guy who's one of the youngest players in college hockey.
Rounding out your top 10, Utah. They're going to be a player in the next week. Between free agency and the draft. Ottawa, Seattle, Calgary, and New Jersey. And you got a couple of New Jersey should be ready to take that next step. We saw that last year Seattle was in the playoffs a year ago. So a couple of teams that aren't pleased to be in the top 10, but have opportunities there. probably wish it was a different year, just because it's so wide open. There is some options there in the top 10 before it gets into a little murkier standpoint.
Well, and sometimes again you get into the bad luck of having a rough season and it puts you in a higher draft spot than you want. But if that draft spot is higher than your development should be, every now and then you pick 10th overall and you put a young, well, again, 10th overall, you're not putting someone in your lineup next year, but you grab someone who maybe the year after next is joining a lineup that's kind of a piece away from being ready to compete right now. Again, New Jersey thinks they've fixed their goaltending problem. That puts them in a vastly different scenario than they were last year, where they were kind of submarine from the get-go.
Had a lot of youth in that blue line as well. Do they add another person that fits a similar story? Calgary would love to backfill on that blue line. Seattle could use it as well. Ottawa has some great pieces, but they're actually talking about moving a blue liner right now. Yeah. Jacob Chikrin sounds like he might be the odd guy out, and who knows with Utah.
But Seattle, you hear a lot of, it seems like a lot of people think they want to go blue line because that's an area that in the draft they really haven't attacked early as much as they can.
What about Vegas? 19th overall on Friday night, and then have 3 more picks on Saturday. We'll dive into what to look for and be aware of in the first round, in and around that 19. We'll look at the players that are rated just ahead and those on the back end. We continue on Nighttime at Noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas.
Fans in need of some new gear for the next game or want to show your VGK pride, visit one of the Vegas Golden Knights official team stores, vegasteamstore.com, or at VGK Gear on Instagram to get the latest updates and VGK swag.
Looking forward to the National Hockey League Draft. This is a special edition of Nighttime at Noon. Coming up, the first round was on Friday night at Sphere, and then gather for rounds 2 through 7 on Saturday. The first round is just basically a TV show, and then they really get into it and just flies by. The rounds 2 through 7 are exact same time allotment as round 1 because of all the TV commitments that are made, and each team goes up and makes their pick up on the stage and the podium. And it's a lot of fun to be at. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't been to a National Hockey League Draft, check it out. Tickets still available.
And you mentioned earlier this is the last year that they're doing this format, which is to say the entire organization goes up on stage, player goes up on stage. After this year, they're going to be moving to something that's far more comparable to what the NFL does. It'll be commissioner on stage, probably player on stage, but the teams themselves will stay home at the war room.
Yeah, you'll still have a program,
yes.
Still have a presentation, still be players around, but the actual player coming over and that picture of meeting everybody at the table and then going through and doing all that comes with it, it's going to move to a different area.
Which I'm going to miss that. I've always enjoyed this format. It'll be exciting to see what the new format brings. But you're going to get still, do you know the way the Sphere is set up? Are they going to have the row on row of
I don't know.
18-foot tables? Okay,
I'm really excited to get there to see how they're going to do it, because that's an amazing canvas that you have there, and what a way to end this era of the National Hockey League Draft by having no limits with Sphere.
The one thing you get at this format that you don't get at other formats, again, this format's going away, is like the NFL Draft, you'll have your insiders, you'll have the first scoop on trade coming or what pick is coming. At the NHL Draft is where you have all the journalists who are in attendance saying, we've just seen Mike Greer walk over and talk he's talking to Chris Drury, so something could be happening. And every now and then it's nothing at all. They're just saying hello, but it's just so funny how...
What's your hotel like?
The movements of the management staffs are just in plain view all the time. I will miss that.
National Hockey League Draft is one of the coolest things that I was able to do back in the Sportsnet days. And one of the fun opportunities was you always get the pick before it's announced. And you finish off, so the first pick, everybody knows. Second pick, you get it, but you have to couch it a little bit. And there's always somebody in your panel that's the eager beaver,
right,
trying to get there and goes a little bit too far in trying to be the expert and the absolute dialed in panelist up there. But it's a lot of fun because you get that sheet of paper and they're going, oh,
we trust
Brian
you.
McCormack, number 2. And you know what? Don't be surprised if they go with McCormack at number 2. Really good defenseman and great hockey sense.
Crystal Ball Millard.
So Vegas has the 19th overall pick, and with as wide open as it is in the first round this year following number 10, there's multiple different directions to go. Thought we'd zero it down to a couple before and a couple after, and you've got Cole Eiserman at 14. If he goes to that number, it's the San Jose Sharks, but he's a winger from the national team program.
He's an interesting one because at the start of the year, you saw him as a possible name that would compete with Celebrini for the top spot. Like, he and Celebrini are close. They've played together in their youth. But he seems like he's drifted down the board to the midway point of the first round throughout the course of the last few months. But prolific goal scorer. He's one of the most impressive pure goal scorers in this draft. The other thing that's really interesting, I think, Daren, is that every year somebody falls. Somebody drifts for one reason or another. I think for Eiserman, it's a little bit of a concern of what the rest of his tool chest has besides being a prolific goal scorer. And again, to give you a little bit of to put some meat on that bone, last year with the U18 national team, he had 58 goals in 57 games. And then in 24 games with the NTDP and the USHL, he had 25 goals in 24 games. He scores. He finishes. Somebody is probably going to get to a point where if he drifts down into the mid-teens, you want to take a swing on Cole Eiserman for sure. So someone who was higher in the early going and now seems to be a little bit more back of the pack is an interesting one to revisit a few years down the road, I think.
It'd be a great add to San Jose Sharks. So we'll have Macklin Celebrini already taken to kick off this draft, so that they need 2 elite offensive players or goal scorers. They do have a need on the back end.
And Yzerman,
let's talk about
6 foot 200. He's not undersized.
Right. 15 on this mock draft that we're going off of, Michael Branzig-Nygaard. He's a forward European. If it plays out, this is a good player, but this is a player that I think really does have that ability to go 13, or he could go 26.
And 18 points in 41 games in Allsvenskan in Sweden last year, which is kind of your Swedish AHL equivalent. He's a player that everyone likes, as well-rounded. You know, again, we mentioned off the top the first forwards that seem to come up in a lot of the conversations. Caden Lindstrom with Medicine Hat, who's your prototypical power forward type, 27 goals in 32 games. He was injured last year. Demidov out of the MHL, which is top junior league in Russia, and again has gotten really good. His stock seems to have gotten more solidified over the last couple of weeks. Berkeley Catton with Spokane is just dynamic. 54 goals. I think he's one of four CHL rookies to hit 50 goals in their draft year, if I'm not mistaken. He's one of 4.
Right.
So there's real dynamic goal scoring, and then as you mentioned,
and that we're talking McDavid, names like Connor Bedard,
McDavid. Written down here somewhere, but again, it's very, very elite company. All names that you know and all names that panned out. So Berkeley Catton, you see, is being in the 8 to 10 range. Maybe he goes sooner. But then when you start to get into the Branzig-Nygaard, the Hellenius, Consta Hellenius, players that are a little more well-rounded, polished, start to seem to be in that early teens window.
Solberg, another European, left-handed shooting defenseman. I've seen him as high as 15. I've seen him right there at 19 with Vegas, and then a little bit lower. So trying to just cover off the bases because it is unique. Michael Haga?
Hage.
Okay.
What's interesting is, so for the VGK, they picked 19th. That's their earliest pick since 2019. That was Peyton Krebs at 17. So it's been a while since they've been in this range of the first round. I wonder, you see them in a lot of these mock drafts looking forward. Again, you're going to take the best person available on your board. There's certainly all areas that they can add to position-wise. I wonder if they might look defense as well, because if you look at their draft history, they've taken 2 defensemen in the last 2 drafts combined. R2 Karki was a 3rd rounder last year, and Abram Wiebe in the 7th round in 2022. And they've taken 1 D in the first round ever, and that was Brandstrom in 2017. So I wonder if that might be an area where they look to add some high end if they feel like it's there.
Anybody that you're really focused on that's captured your attention? There's always a couple of those players every draft where you're drawn to. Robert Thomas was one for me back in the day, only because I would every time I saw him I'd Matchbox 20, and then he wouldn't get it, and we continue. But those type of names always continue to stick in my brain as they grow through. Berkeley Catton, there's a guy. He spent some time with the Hughes through his sports agency, and CA, and he also built his own shooter tutor when he's taking shots in the net, and he actually built his own because there wasn't the holes in the side of the hips on goaltenders where you can shoot at.
Right.
So he got a piece of plywood, cut out a goalie shape of a goalie, and made these the extra holes. So he's kind of an interesting guy. He did some saucer passing with Quinn Hughes at their house, and he was passing it towards Quinn Hughes, and behind him was his new truck, Quinn Hughes' new truck. And he said, I want to switch because I'm too nervous to do that. And they did, and Quinn Hughes sent it over, and it skipped, and it hit his own truck. So Berkeley was good on that. So kind of a cool story.
Berkeley Catton's he's 54 goals and 116 points for Spokane. He's a tremendous finisher, and he might be a better passer to the point that all the mock drafts I see him now, again, there's no shame in being picked 10th or 9th overall or anything like that, but I was surprised he wasn't even a little bit higher. 5'11", 175. Maybe that's what makes him a little behind a couple of other players. Again, only a couple of other players. up front, but just a tremendous playmaker, dynamic, and can find his way to the middle of the ice. Sometimes when you're looking at highlights, you're just like, what's the wow factor? There was one piece of film I saw on the defenseman. I have all the names in my head now. Zane Parekh. He gets the puck behind his own net. And this is, again, just focusing on his skating, his maneuverability. His ability in space, whether it's he gets the puck at the point to scoot his way left or right to create shooting angles, was so impressive. But in this clip that I saw, he got the puck behind the net. He went up the right wing wall, so from behind his own net to the far blue line, literally pedaling. I don't think he took a stride with his right foot the entire time. Opening his hips, almost in a mohawk stance, and just pushing with his left foot. And he beat 2 forecheckers and made all the way out to the neutral zone. So, he has 96 points and insane skating ability.
The coach of the other team watches his players come back to the bench and said, the guy's not even taking a stride. What's going on with you guys?
He's literally dragging his feet. But 96 points and that maneuverability makes Zane Parekh fascinating. For the Golden Knights, I wonder, it's a team there's more USHLers in the middle of the first round than we've said, than we've commonly see. Whether it's Boisvert is in Muskegon, Connolly is a player. Trevor Connolly, you see him again sometimes as high as 10, 11, sometimes as the back of the first round.
He could be top 10.
Trevor Connolly had 78 points this season. We mentioned Hage in Chicago's had a good season. Those are guys I wonder if there might be interest in, because, again, they've scouted the USHL so well. Another one I'm curious about.
By the way, Hage was the first time I saw him, I thought his name was Haig. I'm like, and he's from Mississauga, which is right near. It's different spelling. I realize that.
It'd be too confusing for you.
But, yeah, like, what are we going to do here?
We mentioned Yzerman, how we saw him much higher, and he's scooted back, but the natural gifts are so obvious. Somebody's going to be more than happy to get him if he drops back a bit. Another guy that I saw high in the early portion of the season, who has again kind of dropped back, but still seems to have a late first-round grade for a lot of people, is Charlie Ellick, who's a defenseman out of Brandon.
Vegas has been down that path.
He's a physical
and done really well with that.
Physical defenseman. I think he's 6'3". The offensive points didn't blow you away. He had 27 points in 65 games. Might be why he drifted back a little bit. And again, I have no idea who the VGK scouting staff prefers.
It's a rebuilding program in Brandon too. So,
but who knows Brandon better than the VGK organization? So perhaps that's if anyone's going to creep up the board, I wonder if he might be one who garners some curiosity.
That's the draft. Vegas also has a pick in 6 and then 2 picks in round 7.
Number 180, 197, and 212, if I'm not mistaken.
It does make you think that the opportunity is there for some movement.
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
Would you be surprised if Vegas did some jumping around at this draft?
I think they would be interested in getting involved. Again, waiting from pick number 19 to number 180 is a long wait. So if there's opportunity, then absolutely. And again, as we mentioned, there's 225 players are going to come in this draft. I don't have the greatest finger on the pulse of it's actually a really strong 4th round. I don't know, but it does feel like
and I thought the 4th round it kind of got a little weaker.
Well, but again, you've been poring over this all morning. The reports, he's got the fax machine on his desk. But I would think this feels like a draft where there's going to be people looking to move back and collect more assets. And wouldn't be surprised if Kelly McCrimmon, at the very least, is on the phone calling around and seeing who's feeling a bit stir-crazy.
Fax machine.
Dated myself?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Well, you never answer my phone call, so I assume there's no cell phone.
All right, let's get back into the Stanley Cup Final. Why this is the biggest game in NHL history, we will touch on that as we round out this special edition of Nighttime at Noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas.
If you're a Golden Knights fan, you're probably a Nighthawks fan. The Vegas Nighthawks season is in full swing. They are 9-3 and making a push for the postseason for the first time in franchise history at Lee's Family Forum. Be part of the Indoor Football League experience. The Nighthawks have a couple home games remaining. Get your tickets now at nighthawksfootball.com, nighthawksfootball.com. Nighthawks, as I mentioned, 9-3, and next week at Lee's Family Forum playing the Bay Area Panthers, who are in first in the West. So clash of the top two teams with the playoffs right around the corner.
Good spring for the Panthers in multiple sports.
Yes.
Florida Panthers.
All Panthers are doing well.
Avoid blowing a 3-0 series lead in the Stanley Cup Final. And the Edmonton Oilers with an opportunity to become just the second team ever to rally back from 3-0 down in a Stanley Cup Final. The last time it happened, 79 years ago. Amazing. When the Toronto Maple Leafs came back and beat the Detroit Red Wings. That one, when there was only 6 teams, but Detroit was a 5th-place team that year out of 6 teams. They shouldn't probably have been up 3-0, and Toronto was a good hockey club and came back. So it was almost like normalcy returned. This is a little different. You've got a Florida Panther team that 2 years ago won the President's Trophy. Last year made it to a Stanley Cup Final before being dismissed by the Vegas Golden Knights, and are back again this time. They're a really good program against the best player in the world, an organization that's been dealing with disappointment forever with this core group of number 1 overall picks and then complementary players. It screams at me, biggest game in NHL history. Connor McDavid can become an instant legend. He's already the best player in the world, but he cements himself as a legend for leading his team back from 3-0 down. And then you've got the Florida Panthers, really good program, losing in back-to-back finals and letting a 3-0 lead get away. Pick your storyline, but they're both emphatic.
What's so stunning to me is that, with the exception of, you could say, the third period of Game 5, the Panthers woke up and made a push and just ran out of time. But how dramatically the Panthers have looked absolutely nothing like what they looked like for the better part of 6 months, and how rapidly that happened. I said I had another analogy for it. When I was...
Looney Tunes?
No, not Looney Tunes. I'm going to move on to something a little bit more adult. When I was in Idaho in the ECHL, the head coach there, his name is Neil Graham. He's now the head coach for the Texas Stars. First round, the team fell behind 3-0. And his speech to his team was the little seed of doubt, which is to say there's a team that's up 3-0 on us right now. They're both good teams. They're up 3-0 right now. They shouldn't be. No one in this series should have a 3-0 lead. So they're over there probably saying, wow, we're getting away with one here. All you need to do is create the smallest little bit of doubt in their minds that they are out over their skis, that things aren't as rosy as they appear, and then watch that germinate into a plant of panic. And if you look at this series, should the Panthers have been up 3-0 through those first 3 games?
Certainly not Game 1, right? So
right.
No.
So probably not. Game 4, the 8-1 Edmonton win, when that happened, I thought to myself, okay, you know what, after it got probably 3-0, 4-0, or 4-1, you have an Edmonton team that is in full-blown desperation mode, and a Panthers team that once it got to that point, probably looking ahead to Game 5. So I didn't really think that much of it. In retrospect now, you let Edmonton off the mat, you let everybody feel really good about themselves, and when you followed it up with a really weak start to Game 5, you've got a Panthers team that suddenly looks like panicked, and they're not getting to their forecheck at all. The Reinhardts and the Kachucks and the Verhaeghes are doing nothing.
Like they did last year, but they've certainly lost their game.
Yeah, it's not composure, and also that was a VGK team that completely they didn't need a boost. Like the Panthers lost their game, but the Golden Knights were already steamrolling.
Prices for Game 7 very similar to what we saw in Game 5 here in Vegas last year. About $1,500 a ticket for the upper deck, level 3, and sounds like $3,000 if you want to be down in the lower bowl. Now, the last time in a Stanley Cup Final that a team came back from 3-0 down to force a Game 7, this is the price for a ticket. $1.25. $1.25 in Toronto when the Maple Leafs came all the way back to force Game 7
Should we
and
put
pulled it
that
off
in the
in
inflation
1942.
the inflation calculator? What was that in modern money?
I don't know. I'm not smart enough to have that calculator.
Biggest game in NHL history tonight.
Look, if Florida wins, it will not be remembered as that.
Mm-hmm.
If Edmonton wins, it's on a pedestal.
Florida has to have a really good first 10 minutes. They need to reestablish dominance. They lost their way with that. They have to refind it.
Non-hockey fans will watch it, just like those of us that love our sport. Join us next week, looking ahead to development camp on the heels of the National Hockey League Draft and the Stanley Cup Final. Looking forward to chatting with you then on Nighttime at Noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas.